Hello everybody. From time to time things change, and this period of COVID is no different. For you shelters in Ontario, you've been advised recently by your funder MCCSS that you need to provide statistics on COVID vaccination status of in-shelter clients. At first we just heard about this, as many of you did, and it wasn't until 2 days ago we actually finally received a documentation of specifically what you're being asked to track. So I'm going to show you how I set up this in the demo version of Wish, and perhaps you could do the same at your shelter. So I'm going to jump right in and show you the document that arrived in my inbox a couple of days ago from one of the shelters who was kind enough to forward this to me as soon as they got it. So this is a document that came. It's 4 pages long. It's a PDF. This is what the top of it looks like. It's how to complete the vaccination survey for MCCSS, congregate care in residential settings, and it's marked as a guide. There's 5 pages in it, and if you scroll down to page 4, it starts with this section here, residential clients, and they seem to be asking 3 things. They want to know how many clients currently live at the site who are 12 years and older. They also want to know the total number of current residents 12 years older who have been fully vaccinated. Lastly, they want to know the number of clients 12 years and under who are not eligible to be vaccinated. Those seem to be the only things that they're asking. What the key is in all of these is this word currently live at. So in other words, the way I'm interpreting this is that they want a snapshot of a specific day. I believe the frequency right now is once a month. So it's, according to this document, the way I'm reading it, it's not to include people who have left prior to the day that you're reporting on. It's just people at that moment. So if you've got 10 people in the shelter today, that's what you're reporting on. Okay, let's get this document out of the way, and I'll show you how I set this up in the data version of Wish. The first thing I did was I looked at a couple of different things, and I did send out an email to people a bit earlier on different choices you had. And one of the choices, it turns out, is probably going to be the best here. If I grab any client here, you've got 4 miscellaneous fields. They fall underneath the service language. You may or may not already be using some of these, but if for all intents and purposes, according to the definitions that the ministry's now provided, one of these fields is going to be your best choice for tracking that. So in my demo, I happen to already be using the first miscellaneous fields to track accessibility needs of my client. So I'm going to use an additional one. In this case, I'm going to use the 4th miscellaneous one, the one at the very, very bottom. So if I want to employ that, what I need to do is I need to change the label MISC4, and I also need to provide a list of options for this drop-down box. First thing first, as administrator, you can go up to admin functions and system parameters. When you go into system parameters, you're going to go to workbooks, and down here in the bottom left-hand corner, you can provide labels for those 4 miscellaneous fields. So I'm going to say, okay, so that's COVID vaccination status. So I'm going to save that, and now if I close that field out, you notice that it's changed that label here. Okay. The next thing that I want to do is I want to make that a mandatory field. I want all of my clients and children to have that filled out. So again, I'm still going to go back to the same screen, admin functions and system parameters, but this time I'm going to go under the tab that says workbooks, and now I'm going to check the checkbox for mandatory fields for clients as miscellaneous demographic 4. And I'm going to do the same for children because I want it to be mandatory for both. And now I'm going to save that. So now you can see on that one page we created this label here and we set it as mandatory. That's why it's turned red. The last thing we need to do in terms of setting up this field for use is to provide the codes for use in this drop-down. You notice right now there's no codes. So this is a miscellaneous 4 demographic field. And to provide codes for that, I'm going to go to Code Maintenance, workbook codes, description demographic. I'm going to slide all the way down to miscellaneous 4 demographic codes here. Okay, so I'm going to provide some codes. So those are my drop-down lists so far. But one of the other things that the ministry is asking for is how many people are exempt because of age. So basically, what you might want to do is put an age exemption. You might want to add one other one. You might want to add one that says that they're exempt for other reasons. Once again, you can see the codes that I've set up for that drop box are going to be first vaccination only, both vaccinations. They're age exempt because they're under 12, or they're exempt for other reasons. Some people have medical exemptions, for example. So basically now, you see if I go back to this client's file here, under this vaccination status, you can see I can pick if they've had 1 vaccination, 2 vaccinations, all of these choices. So I'm going to say that this client has had their first vaccination. So the important thing to know is that if you are just setting this up now, what you really want staff to be aware of is that that now needs to be filled out. So immediately if I go to miscellaneous entry screens and I view the shelter by day, I want to go into each adult and each child record that shows in my shelter, and I want to make sure that I pick a valid code for each one of these. Okay? You want to make sure that you do that, and then that way you can get some statistics out of that. One more thing that you may want to do, and this is totally optional, but if you want more details such as their vaccination dates and so on and so forth, which was mentioned in that paper from MCCSS, you could track that under this tab. So in addition to using that miscellaneous field, you may also want to go into this 3rd tab, Children, Abusers, and Others, and down here in this bottom section, you can create a record of that information. So you might want to title this COVID Vaccination Detail. And you can put, perhaps you want to make note that they've got Pfizer was what they had, and you can put their inocular or their vaccination dates in here. And I'm just going to make some up. Okay, something like that you could do. Now, what I suggest, if you choose to use this, leverage the use of this button called Critical Information. Because if you click this checkbox on and select that as critical information, that detail can come out for all in-shelter clients as well. So there's under Reports, there's this down here, Shelter Critical Report, and it will print a list of anybody in the shelter who has any critical information attached to their record here. And you see there's Tamara Jenkins, and it's got hers. There we go. So there's our Shelter Critical Information Report. And what I did notice on here is, for some reason, at least in our demo, the headings are off on this. But regardless of that, you can see how that detail that we entered for Tamara Jenkins shows up on here. You may want to do that, but in terms of tracking for statistical purposes, I'm going to go back to the demographic page where I decided to leverage the miscellaneous 4 field. Okay, now that I've got that, here's how you can report on that. And it just kind of ties into day end. So basically, you want to make sure your day ends are up to date. I happen to be in my demo set of data, and my day ends are actually way back. They're way back here on the 29th. So really quickly, I'm just going to get these caught up to date for the purposes of this video. Okay, so my day end is done up to the day before yesterday. You'll notice if I scroll here, there's my green bar. I can now print a report that's going to give me the status of all these people stayed here on the 23rd and what that miscellaneous 4 field is. And the way I have to do that is I need to create a custom activity report. So under Reports, you have a choice for Activity Report. And if you go in here, you notice you're going to want to say clients who stayed in the shelter, and your date selection is going to be always yesterday. The day end needs to have been done for the day that you're reporting on. But just let me show you right now, if I use a standard template and I print and preview that, I'll just make this a little bit bigger here. You see, this shows me a list of all the adults and kids who are staying in shelter, but it doesn't give me that miscellaneous 4 field. Here's where the use of custom reports comes in really handy. So instead of standard template, I can create a custom template. And if I click on my button here to look up, what you'll notice is you may or may not have some reports here already. I've got one for languages. Now I want to create a new one. I'm going to call it COVID Vaccination Status. And I like putting RPT there. So you can give it a name like that. And when I click OK or Open, it's going to ask me to create the file, and I'm going to say yes. Okay. You'll notice that's here now. When you're logged in as administrator, you can now change or create this design by clicking on this little arrow on the right hand side of the print button. And when I click on that, this pops up into the designer. And it's starting with the blank design, and I actually don't want to start with a blank design, so I'm going to click cancel here. I'm also going to resize this page a little bit so it fits all into the screen so that you can see it. Let me just stretch it as best I can. So at the very top here you can see the actual report template that I'm designing, and in the middle here you've got a blank page. You can start right from scratch and design this, but that's going to take more work than probably most of you want to do. So a real easy way to start is to borrow the design of the standard one that already exists. So if you go to the File button here at the top and click on that, you'll have an option that says Import. And if I click Import, it'll open up this screen so that I can pick an existing template to import from. Now here's the key. You have to kind of look at this edit layout here in this path. So you see what mine is. So you'll have to look and see what yours is as well. But you need to kind of go down that path all the way to where it says report. So if it doesn't pop up there automatically, you're going to need to browse. So I'm going to go into GSC in this case. When you get into reports, you'll see a list that looks very similar to this one. And what you want to do is you want to find this one right here that says activityrpt.lst. And if you click on that and select open, it's going to import that existing template and put it into your custom one. And this is what it looks like here now. Kind of hard to see because it's a bit small. So if I zoom in a little bit, you'll kind of see what you kind of get different layouts. So you've got a layout here, a layout preview, and a preview. Basically, these are all the same sort of thing. What I suggest, if you come in here and you're on your preview, and somewhere in this section here underneath here where my mouse is, if you double click on here, this screen will pop up like this. Make sure that you're on the tab that says Data Line, and where it says Forms Detail, I want you to double click right on Forms Detail. Really easy. We're going to replace that with the miscellaneous 4 information that's connected to that client. So I'm highlighting it, and I'm going to hit the delete key on my keyboard to get rid of that. So notice this is blank here now. Now I'm going to go click on this expand for fields. Notice how that expands out. And if I go down this list, you'll see miscellaneous 4 code, if I just want the code. In my case, I want the name. So I want to select that and click OK. So what I've done, I've replaced that forms detail with miscellaneous name 4. And now if I click OK here and save, remember to save, and close. Now if I'm printing this same report using my custom template that I'm creating, COVID Vaccination Status report, and I click on print and preview, you can see how now all of my clients and kids in shelter will show what that field is set. So I only have 2 set right now in my demonstration, but you can see how they'll come up on this report. This is the data that you need to report to the Ministry of the COVID status. Okay, so one more thing to consider is you can dress this report up even a little bit more, because when you print that, let me just pull that up one more time. When you print that report, you could count each one of these and go down them here, but you could actually create a section at the bottom that will tally it for you. This is a little bit complex in advance, but I'm going to do it, and maybe you can see how this is possible. If you get stuck, of course, you can just reach out and I'd be happy to help you do this. So I'm going to go back to the design, and I'm going to do something really fancy up here under project. I'm going to go down and I'm going to use some variables, it's called. So I'm going to create a new variable by clicking on here, and I'm going to call it, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, once I've got that line on here, I can double click on it, and now I can say for this, what this is it's saying if the person has that field set to the code age, add 1 to my counter, and if it doesn't, add 0. Okay. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another new one. It's going to be the same thing now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my if statement. Okay. And now the last one I'm going to make is to count all the people who are fully vaccinated, are anything except age exempt, basically. So these are the 3 things that the ministry is going to ask for, and we can get them all in this report. Once I have that, I'm going to click again into this section where the table is, and I'm going to put this on the footer line. That's the very end of the report. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this, I'm going to create a new line. I'm going to start an empty line. This, as I said, this is a little bit advanced, but if you follow through, you can make an empty line. I'm going to give this, I'm going to add to this one more. These are actually columns. This is going to come from my sum variable. That's going to be that number there. I'm going to copy this line 2 more times. Copy, paste, paste. I'm going to rename this one line 2. This one's going to be line 3. Just going to change the title of this one to say, get rid of this one here, and I'm going to put this one in its place. And the last line is going to be for the kids who are age exempt. Okay, so just really quickly, I didn't make it too pretty or anything, but if I save my design, which I did up here, and then exit out, now if I print that same report and preview it, you can see here that I've got one that's over 12 and fully vaccinated, and because these aren't filled in, all the other ones are just showing as not age exempt. So the key to this is making sure that miscellaneous field is populated for every client. So if you see any blanks on this page here, what you need to do is make sure that you go to each and every client and child workbook and properly complete that field. And then you're going to be able to pull the statistics out for your shelter. Just really quickly, if I grab one more person who's in the shelter right now, Let me just grab Susan, for example. I go back to my reports now and down to my activity report. Got my current date in that I want to report on. That would be yesterday, that the day has been done. I choose my custom template, which you may recall I called this COVID vaccination. And now when I click the print button and preview, I've got more of these fields that are filled out now. Let me just fit this into the screen. I still have an awful lot of blanks, so I want to make sure eventually that I fill all these out properly. But you can see the way my totals have come up down here in the bottom. And that's the way that you can get this report out for the ministry. Okay, that was quite a bit of information in a video. And of course, if you need help, just reach out and I can arrange a time to help you do that. But that should be a good way for you to approach the COVID vaccination status if you're a shelter in Ontario.